Hi there, this is Stephanie Cochran with the Green Shoe Foundation, and welcome to Green Shoe Conversations, episode 9. We are so excited you guys have decided to join us today with my awesome team that I have with me. I've got Miss Teresa Deck, our clinical director, and Stephen Brinkworth, our therapist. How are y'all doing today?
We're doing good.
How are you? I don't know how it is for everybody else, but kind of let y'all know time frame for us. It's Friday morning for us, so this is a good day. Teresa, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit for everybody listening in?
Certainly. I'm the clinical director here at Green Shoe. I've been here almost since the beginning. We started groups in July of 2016, and I came in October of 2016. So I missed the first 3 groups, but been here ever since, and it is just an amazing journey. Green Shoe is an amazing program who've helped hundreds of individuals learn to be their authentic self. So I'm an LPC and have been for over 20 years and licensed professional counselor. And I just am so excited about getting to work at Green Shoe and getting to do the work that we get to do here.
Awesome. Thank you. Steve, why don't you introduce yourself to everybody?
I'm Stephen Brinkworth. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I've been here at Green Shoe for about 2.5 years. Before here, worked in inpatient psychiatric hospitals, done a lot of groups, and the groups we do at Green Shoe are absolutely amazing. I've loved the model and really enjoy working with our team, and it's amazing to see the healing that can happen in a 5 days time as we give ourselves the permission and the space and time to really focus on ourselves and on our own healing and recovery.
Awesome. Well, last week we started talking about self-esteem. Now, anybody who maybe didn't listen last week or tune in, self-esteem is one of the 5 core issues, a part of the model that we use. And really it kind of led into some great discussion, and we wanted to continue that conversation today with that. So, Teresa, why don't you kind of recap that core issue for us and how the model looks at self-esteem?
Certainly. Self-esteem is what Pia calls the first basic element of our characteristics. And when we are born as an infant, we are born with inherent worth. And how we are valued in our family, we learn how to have self-esteem by how our parents treated us and how they esteem themselves. And so this value and worth is inherent. We can't do anything to earn it. It's the same from the day we're born until the day we die. We have value and worth strictly because we're a human being, for no other reason. Our strengths don't make us any better, and our weaknesses don't make us any less. So many times we learned in childhood that we were valued for what we did or didn't do, how we behaved, or if we misbehaved. And so our value went up and down with our parents, how they perceived us. But our value does not, our self-esteem is not. But we learned how, as a child and now as an adult, we base our worth on our actions, on what we do, and that's other esteem. So many times that how much money we make or what kind of car we drive, we base our value and worth on other things or other people, what others say about us. So that's other esteem, not self-esteem. So I think we made that distinction last week. But it's the first core issue. Every child needs to feel valuable, not better than and not less than.
Absolutely. And I think that's what makes it such, and I know I'm using the word core, but that is why it's a core issue, is, when I ask you the question, where do we get our sense of value or sense of worth? Then, you tell me, well, it's because you are worthy. And I think that's what's different. And sometimes maybe hard, or sometimes a sense of relief for people to hear that. Steve, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, being that we're born inherently valuable, inherently worthy, we start to pick up messages along the way, just like Teresa was talking about, that may heighten that understanding of our value. It may diminish that sense of our value based on how we are engaging individually in relationships, whether I'm productive, not productive. And so as we look at self-esteem, there are many factors that this plays into. So we had kind of discussed a little bit earlier that this has an impact on all the core issues, but this is a core place that we need to be aware of in terms of recognizing our own value. If I recognize that I am inherently valuable, I also recognize that I am precious just the way I am, and I have a right to be protected. I have a right to affirm myself. I have a right to know that I can make a mistake, and that doesn't make me any less than anybody else. It just is part of my humanity. And there's some shift that happens from what I initially knew about self-esteem before this model and after learning this model. So recognizing that inherent worth is really a paradigm shift in some ways that can be different from what I've experienced in my past. And so recognize that really gives me some hope.
It does.
And it has to come from within. It can't come from without, from anybody else. It has to be built inside. I know inside me, it's inside out, that I have value and worth.
Right. Just like you said, when we talk about the other esteem. And so, no, your self-esteem has to come, from inside. And Steve, you mentioned in the very, very beginning, talking about allowing people to be their authentic self. And I just can't imagine that you'd be able to do that if you didn't have that self-esteem and feel that self-worth in order to, to do that. Last week too, and Teresa, actually, I believe you talked about how with self-esteem, it's on a scale. There's we can have obviously that low sense of self-worth or too high of a self-esteem. And what would you say though, through, working with everybody that we work with, what do we typically tend to see on that scale of self-esteem?
You can be at either end of the spectrum, and neither is healthy. We need to be in that middle of feeling equal with others, not better than, not less than. And so what we see typically coming through the week, and Steve, you can address this too, is we see individuals usually coming in with lower self-esteem, not loving themselves. And so, but yet in ways, we all can, in one relationship, feel less than others, and in another relationship, feel better than others, and feel grandiose and judgmental and critical, because we all have those voices. And if you were a child and grew up with a critical, judgmental parent, you then become judgmental and critical of yourself and other people. And that puts you in that one-up position. When you judge somebody, you are putting yourself above them and not equal with them. So we see both, but I would say the majority, most of us struggle more with low self-esteem if we experience dysfunctional families, but yet we see both. Steve, do you agree?
I do. And just like you were talking about, it can be at one of those extremes in one situation and at a different extreme in a different situation. So I may have one set of relationships where I feel better than. I may have another set of relationships where I not only feel but engage in those relationships from a place of less than. It's when we're in that place of better than, and I think this is probably part of what comes up in terms of where we see more folks come in that may be more familiar with the less than component. Because if I'm in that one-up position, feeling better than, I don't think there's anything wrong with me. It's everybody else that has. So I'm not looking to change me.
Yeah.
But in that one-up position, that can become something that I start to notice these relationships are failing, and the common denominator may be me. That I may be engaging in a way that is offensive to others from that one-up position. And so it's a place that both have an impact on our relationship.
And it's like I use the analogy sometimes of the bully on the playground. You think they feel better than, but down underneath is hurt and pain and anger, and they've probably been abused at home and not valued at home, and so they're going to take it out on the other kids on the playground. And so you think you see that grandiose "I'm better than," yet underneath is that hurting little boy that feels less than.
Absolutely. I think another important piece too thinking about this is when we think about that other esteem and think about those messages we get from other people, that when it comes to my self-esteem, anything that anybody else has to say, even if it's good, is none of my business when it comes to self-esteem. Just like you mentioned, that self-esteem has to come from within. And so if I'm borrowing those statements and observations from other people, I'm using that information from someone else. And so it's not coming from within.
And I think about our society, though, how we give accolades to individuals who do well and succeed, and not that there's anything wrong with that, but when they get their esteem based upon what they've done, and that's not true self-esteem, and that again puts them, wow, look at me because of my accolades, not just look at me, who am I am valuable just because I'm Teresa, Steve, Stephanie. We're valuable just for who we are.
Right. I mean, how many times do we see on social media, Facebook, Instagram, people that are posting all these pictures and they're posed just perfect and they've got the right filter, or they're at a certain restaurant and they only put the good, and to be honest, it's not real. You know, it's not authentic, but yet they put that out there and trying to make this be like, oh, look how good I am. You know, and try to get their self-worth by how many likes did I get off that one picture, you know, or how many friends do I have on Facebook.
When I heard you say that, Stephanie, what I thought of was the other day, I think it was one day this week, my daughter sent me a picture of my almost 3-year-old granddaughter, and her hair, she looked like a wild woman. She had just gotten up, she had slept really hard, and it was the cutest, funniest thing, but probably wouldn't put it on Facebook, but she sent it to Gigi, and it was like, wow, precious. Even in the midst of the hair like this and the eyes looking like I just got up and I don't know where I am and I'm tired, she's still valuable for just that precious little child.
Right. And I like to see that, because you know what? That's how I look when I get up in the morning. You know? So in a way, it's affirming, you know, the real life versus the life I want everybody else to think I have and think I see. How does codependency then fit into self-esteem?
It is the first core issue of self-esteem, of codependency, in that if we feel less than, that is not healthy for us. We're not a healthy, functional adult. If we feel better than others, again, that is part of our unhealthiness, our dysfunction as a functional human being. That's what we teach adults how to be, as a functional adult. And so self-esteem, feeling better than or less than, is that first core issue, and it impacts our relationships. Because if I feel better than you, I'm going to feel like I can tell you what to do and how to do it. If I feel less than, I will allow you to dictate my beliefs and what I do and what I think. And so it impacts our reality. It impacts who we are when we try and tell others, or we let others tell us what to do and how to think and who to be.
Steve, you and I have had conversations about this, and you've brought up the role shame plays, especially when it's dealing with low self-esteem. And that you've made this statement that shame shuts you down, which then means spontaneity ceases to exist.
So when we experience that shame, there's a message that I'm not worthy, I'm not valuable. When we've received those messages over time, we can build what's called a shame core. And as an adult, when any of those messages, any of those reminders get stimulated, I can not just feel less than, but feel worthless. And so that shame, just like you mentioned, ceases that ability to exist as a spontaneous person, because it shuts down my reality. It shuts down that sense of value and belonging and connection, because I don't feel worthy of it. And that's a component that, just like Teresa was mentioning, if I feel better than or less than, both of those are going to have an influence on how I engage in relationships. When we experience shame, and this is a little different than some models, we have our own shame and we have what's referred to as carried shame. And so that carried shame is what causes that sense of worthlessness when that gets stimulated for us to feel less than, like I don't have a right to be here in some ways too. So that's an important factor to look at, but our own shame does not do that. Our own shame lets us know if I've overstepped my bounds and I need to set some limits on myself to rein me back in so that I'm not offensive to other people. So there are two different ways that shame exists, but that carried shame is something that can cease our spontaneity and can cause us in the moment to feel worthless.
Mm-hmm.
It may not be in the midst of the same situation that it initially happened. I may be at work and something happens and that comes up and feel worthless. It may be that when there's I'm running late, and the messages that I got about being punctual or being on time, that if I wasn't there on time, then there was something wrong with me. Not that it was wrong I was late, but wrong with me. And so now if I'm running late and that stimulates that memory and stimulates that shame, I can immediately go into a shame attack and feel less than and worthless.
So what do you do, Steve, when we get to that point of when you feel that shame attack and feel worthless?
Mm-hmm. One of the things that we do at Green Shoe is we'll track that shame and look at what was it that brought that up. And so as we identify where that was stimulated, we can look at where that impacts those 5 core issues, and we utilize what's called shame-bind affirmations. So we work to break that carried shame so that we can honor that right that we have to exist and be and recognize our own inherent value and worthiness to be here on this planet in relationships and recognize that self-worth. And so if in the moment, say that example of running late, and I feel like I am running late, I'm worthless, and I start to shut down, I have a right to make a mistake and know that that doesn't make me less than. That's one of the shame-bind affirmations that I might use in that moment to help break that shame and recognize that that message is not part of my reality, but it's trying to interfere with my reality.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And those affirmations are key. And that's something that I know you guys start using as a tool and teaching on Monday, and is used throughout the week, and having participants read those affirmations to themselves and over and over. And you guys have used those affirmations just in this conversation, I've noticed, you know, just the I am worthy, you know, and I have a right to feel worthy. And so those are so impactful. Talk about the other side, the when we do have that I'm better than, how can we kind of help find that moderation point in our self-esteem?
I think one of the keys is recognizing that I just went to a judgmental place. I just made a judgment. I just put myself in that one-up position by putting someone else down or by telling them they made a mistake. And so that puts me one up and judgmental and better than, instead of asking and finding out in a curious way as to what was happening. And so that offensive better than better than place, we learned that sometimes when we were a child, when our parents didn't set limits and boundaries for us, when we weren't contained, when we felt like we could do whatever we wanted to do and the rules didn't apply to us. So learning how, as that functional adult, to connect with that part of us that is that better than place and say, wow, that's not okay right now. We're equal than, you're no better than the other person. And so they have a right to be here. They have a right to exist. They have a right to their own thoughts and feelings, and for us not to try and control. But when we grew up in dysfunction and there was no control in our families, many times that person that goes to that one-up place just wants control. They want to feel like they have control, power, and abundance in their life. But when they go one up, that they become offensive. And recognizing wow, I need to get back down to that middle psychological balance of I'm equal, they're equal. It's not my place to judge. I make mistakes too. I'm human.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that is one way. Steve, what else would you think on the grandiose one-up person?
I think another piece that can be important as we think about some of the thoughts that come up when we're in that one-up position, and think about some of the things that I may feel like I have a right to in one-up position. The other person has these rights too. It's not just me. It's not a one-sided piece. So as I think about, I have a right to be comfortable in this moment. I have a right to have a say. I have a right to speak my mind. And the same is true for them. And I recognize that they have those same rights too,
Mm-hmm.
to shift back into that place of harmony, where we can engage in this in a healthy, mature way, and not in a way that is a immature response for my current age. So I'm not one up, belittling, judgmental, and I'm not shutting down. I'm not going into that less than position either.
We've only got a couple minutes left, but I want to kind of bring us back to really one of the main reasons we even started this podcast. We were in a quarantine at the time, dealing with the pandemic, and we are still dealing with the pandemic, and talking about starting back in school. Some people are going back to work. Some are not going back to work. They're still, working from home, and how coping with taking care of ourselves and our self-esteem through this. What suggestions or comments do you guys have as people are still dealing with all of this turbulence?
I think one of the things that's really helpful, and we suggest at the end of the retreats, and we suggest for anybody, that they use your daily affirmations. Remind yourself every day how valuable and worthy you are, whether you get up and do anything. You're breathing, you are valuable, you have inherent worth. And so remind yourself, have affirmations that you can can choose one for a day, and then think about that often during the day. And if something happens and you feel yourself going one up or one down, say, no, this is where I need to be right now. And so affirm yourself in a way that's healthy. And we have great affirmations that we teach individuals. There's all kind of daily meditation books and inspirational books that you can get, that and make sure they're healthy ones, that you are valued, and affirm yourself for just your inherent worth, not based upon what you do or don't do. So I think that's one thing, is remind yourself daily and out loud all day long about your inherent worth. Steve, do you have another suggestion?
As you're talking about that, what comes up for me is a memory and a continuing occurrence that happens when I get the opportunity to play disc golf with some of my friends. I have a friend who, when somebody is on the course playing, and even just being there, taking time to get out in the woods, enjoy some company, enjoy some nature, one of the phrases he uses is, "You're doing a good job." And if I can tell myself that throughout the day, and it's a reminder, as we hear him mention that, it's a reminder to give ourselves that credit too. And not that I'm doing a good job at being productive. It's that I'm doing a good job at being me. Part of that is taking care of ourselves. Things that really help to recharge our batteries and help to enhance that presence of self-love, self-engagement, because as I engage myself and give myself credit and affirmation, I'm not only increasing that benefit for myself, but for the other people that I'm in relationships as well. And I'm not doing that for them, that for me. And that helps to increase that sense of self-worth in a way that it's not making me better than, it's just enhancing that place for me to exist and balance, so that I can engage in my day-to-day routine in a healthy and mature way.
I hear you say about that, and what I make up and think about that is being mindful and being present. What am I thinking? How am I feeling about myself? What am I telling myself? What words are going through my head? And am I just enjoying being me? So you have to be mindful and be present at this time when there are so many changes and so many things that can create that fear and anxiety. So be mindful and be present.
Yeah, and being able to be mindful. So I'm aware of it, but I'm not passing judgment on it. So even if I'm aware of using some judgmental language towards myself, I can use that and go, okay, I can change this and recognize the impact that has and shift my language into a that's healthier for me.
Absolutely.
Acceptance.
That is I think a great place to end, just with the point too of you are worthy. And one of my favorite things, and of course we end up putting on a t-shirt, is I'm perfectly imperfect. I mean, that affirmation in itself has been just so impactful for me, and just, you know, and using that. So thank you guys so much for doing this today and talking. It's always so good to kind of just chat and listen and hear. So we will be at it again next week. If you'd like to get a hold of us, make sure you go to our website at greenshoe.org. You can also email if you have any questions at info@greenshoe.org. Find us on Facebook and Twitter, and we will be back at it next week. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.